This is a podcast about a college athlete and a guy that definitely would not have talked to her in college. Now they get paid to talk to each other broadcasting basketball games, although they don't get paid to do this podcast yet.
All right, welcome back into The Athlete and the Guy. My name is Joel Godet.
And I'm Meghan McEwen.
And this week we have a little bit of a different episode for you. Usually, like when we named this show, The Athlete and the Guy Who Wouldn't Have Talked to Her in College, it was like funny and it's like, yeah, we'll do this cute sports show and like we'll have a good time. And now it seems weird because we're going to dive into a really serious topic and now it seems sarcastic.
Well, that being said, I think it's a really important topic that has dominated our country for a long time, but as of late, recent events, it has come to the forefront. And I'm really looking forward to the conversation that we're about to have. And I hope that people can learn from it. And, I hope people can just think.
All right, we dive right in this week. Jonathan Newsome joins us. He's a linebacker in the CFL, formerly a linebacker with the Indianapolis Colts. That's where Meghan covered him. John and I go back to his days in college as a defensive end at Ball State. John, we're going to start with the 30,000-foot view of the question that neither Meghan nor I can answer. What is it like to be a black man in America?
Man, to be a black man in America. Well, for one, growing up, you're taught that you're either supposed to be dead or in jail. That's the first thing that we're taught. So as a kid growing up, my mother always raised me to do things, to move with, move in caution. You know what I mean? Basically, I'm a target. And it's been proven throughout history that, that my group of people, black people in general, but it's been other groups that have been targeted. But, for the most part, it's been like a genocide for my people. And we just kind of are fed up with it, I guess. And I get why people are emotionally responding, because it feels like, in comparison, it feels like a kid that goes to school every day and gets bullied. You know what I mean? And then you finally want to stick up to the bully. And now everybody looking at you crazy, like you did something wrong because you fought back, But I think there's just a time and place for everything. I think that we need better leaders in the community, because we shouldn't keep repeating the same thing over and over again. If we can go back 100 years from now and literally say this same thing was happening 100 years ago, then there's a problem. You know what I mean? There's a generational curse. And I think that, I understand like all the energy that we have from frustration, but it needs to be directed into the right form, into the right response. You feel me? It's not going to be, let's go fight, let's go attack businesses, let's go blow up stuff, let's go be destructive, let's go act like animals, let's go act exactly how they want you to act. It's just frustrating, man. I understand my people's frustration. I'm not saying that, we don't deserve to feel how we feel, but I do think there's a better way.
Go back to when you grew up in Cleveland, and we've had the conversations before about what it was like growing up for you in Cleveland. When you said, from an early age, you're taught you're either dead or in jail. No one ever said that to me, so I can't empathize with what that feeling is like. What is that realization like for you when you're a young child, that's what you're fighting against, and you have to succeed against those odds?
You don't really understand it until you actually experience it for the first time. It's so crazy because we were all hanging out, my family, we were hanging out last night, and I asked them, I said, what was the first time you ever experienced racism? And, everybody said, it was when I was a kid and I was in the store and they thought I was stealing something, or, whatever the story was. And I said to myself, I said, do you ever think like racism was taught to us? So, like, would you have ever even known it was racism had you not been taught what racism was? Like, is racism really a thing, or is it an ideology? So like I said, it start with raising our kids the right way and telling them, no, you're not supposed to be dead or in jail. Like, you know what I mean? Like, let's change the narrative. Let's change the whole system. You know what I mean? You're trying to fix a broken system. You need to just get rid of the system and start a whole new one. You feel me? We need to start telling our kids, like, you're a king. You know what I mean? In a sense, you're a descendant of kings. If you really knew your history, you'll sit here and act that way. You don't have to glorify ignorance, because ignorance is bliss, man. People are comfortable and people have become comfortable with this. You feel me? Like, it's like crazy right now. But I really do feel like the media plays a large role in stirring up stuff. Just basically, you keep showing us the same thing over and over again, feeding our subconscious mind, you know what I mean, of things that we're not even aware of when we're doing it. You know what I mean? So I can sit here and watch a TV show all my life growing up, and the things that happen on that TV show subconsciously are going, you know what I mean? I fed my subconscious. So I'm literally acting like this TV show that I watched growing up all my life. I see it with my child all the time. He sit here and acts out all the little cartoons and stuff that he watches. And, you know, that's how he pretty much learns everything. It's just about what he sees and what he's taught. So it's not like we were all born here. You were born racist. You were born anything. No, you were taught everything. You feel me? So it's all about really switching up the education, figuring out what it is we're being taught, and then start teaching the right things. I don't know exactly what all the right things are, but I know what's not working. I do know what's not working. So,
John, these recent events have forced people to start having these hard conversations and take a deep look in the mirror and reflect on what they think and what their biases are. You mentioned growing up in certain areas. How important is it that we as a society start having these hard conversations, and how should we go about this?
I said this in an interview not too long ago, and because somebody asked me basically like how I got to this point, I basically had to learn how to separate my emotions from reality. And I think people got to understand that, like, just because you feel a certain way, that doesn't necessarily mean that's what's going on. You know what I mean? But you are entitled to how you feel. You know what I mean? It's so much gray area in what I'm saying. So basically, you have a choice. You know what I mean? You have a choice on how to respond. That's pretty much all that life is. It's about how you respond. If we were taught how to respond correctly instead of emotionally, then we could have these conversations like grown-ups, and people wouldn't get offended when somebody comes with a different opinion than you, or if I come with a different idea, if I say something that I'm literally just talking, but I'm not trying to attack you. People feel attacked when you speak your opinion, and that's the problem now. Like, I had the same issue just talking to some of the closest people in my life. Like, they feel like I'm attacking them, and I'm not. I'm really not. I'm passionate about what's going on, and I think that, and I just don't think that the people who are leading us correctly. And I'm not talking about President Trump. I'm talking about us black people. Like, we need black leaders. We need y'all to stop telling kids stop telling us to do stupid stuff. Stop glorifying the ignorant stuff. Start really building up the community. We got so many rich black people in the world. We should be having some real ownership. We got all these fraternities, but we ain't even got no real black power. You know what I'm saying? The last time we had a group that was able to come together as a black group with some power was the Panthers, supposedly. You know what I mean? And they killed Huey Newton. So it's just like, that's the real threat, is unity, is us coming together. That's the real threat. They don't want people to come together. So they're going to sit here and create race wars. I mean, racism is taught. It's not a real thing. I'm sitting here with two white people right now. Like, and Joe, we are close, bro. You are my brother. Regardless if you black, white, orange, blue, don't matter what color you are. You feel me? We are, these bodies that we in are nothing but shells. Everybody here is a star. Everybody here is spiritually, you know what I'm saying? You're a spirit, you're a soul before you anything. And if people understood that, you'll stop looking just, you'll look deeper than just the cover of the book. You'll find out who people really are inside. Because it can be a redneck looking person right over there, but he could be the most, you know what I mean? Judging book by its cover, I would think like, yeah, he'll probably shoot me if I cross him the wrong way or something, or if I'm sitting here on the corner with a whole bunch of other black people and we all just chilling. You all of a sudden think we on some bullshit. We selling drugs. We're a gang or something. It's just preconceived notions that we've been taught. Stop teaching trash. Stop teaching us trash. Stop oppressing us through our education. Real talk. Because that's the only thing that we gonna do. The only reason we act the way we do is because of what we know. Teach people different things. Teach people different ideas. Teach people different habits, different cultures. You feel me? We all are humans. We are humanity. If we come together as humanity, we don't have to worry about who's black and who's white.
I want to ask you about this from a football standpoint. Obviously, Colin Kaepernick has gotten a lot of the attention. He's gotten a lot of the attention over the last couple of days. A lot of the Colts took a knee as part of that in 2016 or 2017 as well. I know Eric Walden was one of them. I know he was the guy that you backed up in the NFL.
That's my boy, for sure.
What are the kinds of conversations that you guys had in the league and as pro athletes with a platform and with a stage to draw attention to all of the things that they've tried to and that we've just talked about?
It's actually more difficult than you would think because, yeah, we got these platforms, but just as like somebody will feel like I'm attacking them because I'm expressing myself through words, through actions, taking a knee, whatever it is, people take offense to that. So think about the billionaires that own these football teams that already told you, we don't want you kneeling. You know what I mean? So you have to make a choice right now to use your platform to really do something for the greater of all people, or you can be quiet and, keep your dollar for yourself. You know what I'm saying? And I was telling people yesterday, I said, we got a lot of leaders that aren't willing to go out that aren't willing to sacrifice themselves. You know what I mean? If we want to talk about Jesus Christ, somebody who came, the story is he came and died on the cross for our sins. But when he was down here, he kept telling everybody, I'm the son of God. I'm the son of God. Why? I'm going to turn some water into wine. I'm going to do all these amazing things to prove to you right now that I am God. I'm the son of God. But they still stoned him. We're still not going to believe him. You're offending us with all this God talk. You understand what I'm saying? So it just takes a real leader to be able to deal with the backlash, but understand that you are reaching but you got to understand you are reaching somebody. Everybody doesn't feel that way, but the backlash is, we like to focus on the negative a lot in this world. Naturally, as humans, we focus more on the negative than the positive. That's why people's life that's why people be miserable or stressed out, because y'all are worried about the wrong stuff. That's why I tell people never ever worry. Worry about what you can control. It's real, man. It's real. It's deeper than black and white. I can't sit here and be it's hard, man. It's hard using your platform when you got a different opinion than everybody else because, my friends are caught up in the whole, this is messed up. I'm sick of it. And I feel for y'all. I do, but it's another way. And it's different. It's a different approach we need to take. And it's more things we need to do to be well equipped to go to war with the people that you're trying to go to war with. They've already infiltrated your household. They've infiltrated your neighborhoods. You feel me? They put liquor stores all in the corner. Every hood you got liquor stores. Every hood you got drugs. Every neighborhood is owned by some white people, but it's all black people that's living there. So there's no real money going back into the black community. All we're doing, and then they also incarcerating the black father. So now the family is messed up. The black man hasn't even been around to take care of their family. So now you got kids growing up with just one parent. You know what I mean? Most successful people have both parents in their life. Statistically, you know what I mean? It's just y'all. It's a strategy, man. It's deeper. You think some of the smartest people in the world haven't already thought well ahead? Think about it. America's a corporation. We're owned by banks. Let's just start talking about what's real, man. Stop telling people what they want to hear, and let's talk. Like you said, let's talk. Let's have these real conversations without our emotions attached, so that we can really make a real change. Because if we just sit here, sad and mad all the time, we're not thinking clearly. That's just what it is. It's sad, man. It's sad being an athlete with a platform and you sitting here trying to, one, keep your job that you worked all your life for, but also be able to help, use your platform to, help others. And I think really that's what happened with me, man. Like, I think my purpose is much more bigger than football. I think I'm supposed to help people. I'm supposed to lead people to the light, to their inner light. I don't know where the light is. All I know is I'm trying to better myself. You feel me? So I can't help you out unless I help myself. You can't help nobody else unless you help yourself. So everybody start taking care of themselves. That's the first thing. Go look in the mirror, figure out what it is you need to do to be better with you first, because you worry about everybody else, but you got some issues your own. You need to fix that first. Real talk.
John, how did you develop this mindset?
Just going to Canada and losing it all. Being able to have to figure, like I really hit ground zero when I worked my whole life to get to where I was at in the NFL. And one moment of just not thinking clearly, or just not, or just not seeing the bigger picture, I lost it all. So I had to figure out a way to bring myself back up, and it wasn't going to be through $1 million check this time. So now what am I going to do? You know what I mean? I'm up here trying to figure out what it is about me that I need to change. And I went to Canada, and I spent time up there, and I went through my trials and tribulations up there. And then I also had a child. I mean, I had my first child, and that lit a fire in me as well, because now I got somebody who's literally judging me every day, watching my every move, just trying to, you know, so I got to make sure that I'm a man. You know, I didn't have my father in my life the whole time. I had my father. I had my stepfather when I turned 13. He came as well. Actually, when I turned 9, my stepfather came into my life. He adopted us at 13, but then they were divorced by the time him and my mother divorced by the time I was a junior in high school. So it's just been inconsistent man in my life as a leader. You know what I'm saying? I had to learn things through football. And I think that's another reason why I'm so aggressive in the way I talk to people, is because I come from a football background where a damn coach is cussing your ass out, and you got to hear them. You got to hear the message and not the tone. You understand what I'm saying? So I talk to people in the same way, and not everybody is built that way. We need to, but if everybody had a background of actually playing on the team, you understand? You understand that, one, in order to be on the team, I have to play my role. So now I have to take care of me first. But now that I've taken care of me, I can play for the next person. I can play for the person next to me. You saw the camaraderie we had on the phone yesterday, Joe. That's real brotherhood, bro. And it was black, white, all different races on the phone. That's a real brotherhood, bro. And that's what the world needs to be like. But we're not used to playing on the same team. We're used to playing against each other. Bring people together. That's what scares them, right? That's the scary part. When you can bring people together, this world would be so much better. But the way of controlling groups of people is to create an enemy. They taught us this at Ball State. When I took theology, all that, man, religion in a sense, like you have a different religion than me, we have different religions. This means that we're playing for different teams. It should just be spirituality. No matter what you believe, I should be able to accept that, and we ought to be able to walk hand to hand for the greater cause. Whatever it is, it should be about what the bigger picture is. It shouldn't be about how somebody, you know, you made me feel this way, you made me feel that way. Yeah, we are entitled to our feelings, but we got to separate our emotions from reality. Stop acting stop reacting emotionally. If I sit here and react emotionally every time, I'm going to get myself in some trouble. This is what it is, man. You got to learn how to play the game. You can't. If you didn't make the game, you didn't make the rules, there's no way you're going to change the rules. You either instill a whole nother game, you feel me? You uninstall this old one and get a new game, you feel me? Or find another game plan. I put it to people like in football terms, like, okay, it's just like for the last 100 years, in the last 100 years, 400 years, whatever, for black people, it's been like a first half versus the Patriots are just getting your ass whooped. We're just whooping our ass. They just whooping our ass. But we came out here and said we were going to run the ball. And they knew we were going to run the ball because they played. They did their game. They already studied us all week long. They knew we were going to come run the ball. So now that we came out in the first half, thought we was going to run the ball, and they shitted on us. It's just like as if today is almost as if it's halftime, and we went to the locker room. It didn't change a goddamn thing. All we did was yell. Y'all need to play better. You need to play harder. Okay, we are playing harder, but we ain't changed the game plan, coach. You still out here trying to run the ball. And they know we're running the ball, so we're still getting shitted on. We're still getting our ass slapped around, no matter how hard we're playing. You get what I'm saying? We still play. Yeah, we playing hard, but we're losing because we didn't change the game plan up. You need to make some halftime adjustments in football terms. We need to make some halftime adjustments in this world.
You mentioned those halftime adjustments, and we now live in a world where everybody has a platform on social media. So how can our generation use our platform to change the game plan and to have a better outcome in the second half?
We need to be better educated, and we need courage. We need real courage. That's all. Just don't be scared, man. Like, people are so scared of the inevitable, the unknown. Don't worry about that stuff. Do what you can do. Control what you can. If you got a voice, if you got an opinion, let it be heard. It's okay. You're going to just know that what you put out there, if your intentions are good, you'll get good intentions back. If you have negative intentions, this is the law of attraction. This is whatever you want to call it. This is the universe. Whatever you put out is karma. Whatever you put out, you get back. So set your intentions and act. Set your intentions and put some action to it. It's that simple. That's how the world works. That's how you manifest. Set your intentions, put some action behind it. Put some real action behind it, and believe. and believe that it can be done. But see, it's a lot of people that lost hope, lost belief. You know what I mean? We need to uplift everybody. We need to figure out how to speak in everybody's language so that they understand the message and not just the person saying it. They're not just looking at who's saying it. I mean, even Donald Trump sometimes has some of the craziest things to say, but sometimes he says some good stuff, but we already don't like him. So we're not going to listen to nothing good he might be able to say. You know what I mean? I'm a person who I believe that in order to really come into your own, you need to be able to form your own opinion. You need to be able to look at different sources. You need to be able to listen to different sources, whether you agree with them or not. You at least got to listen. I need to at least gather this information that you got. But as long as somebody's telling me what to think, as long as somebody's telling me how it is, I don't have a mind of my own. And this just goes back to we're supposed to be dead or in jail. Really? Why? Why am I supposed to be dead or in jail? Because I'm black? You, as the black mother, black parent, should not be telling me that. I'm not supposed to be dead or in jail. Tell me I'm supposed to be whatever I want to be or something. You know what I mean? Tell me that I can do whatever it is that I want in this world if I believe, if I set my intentions, if I work hard. You feel me? Let's start repeating this. Let's start putting more positive energy in the world. Stop repeating the same oppressing shit. Stop showing us people getting killed. Stop showing us the riots. Stop showing that stuff. Spread some more love, and you'll get that. But as long as everybody like retweeting, like this is the world that we live in. We live in a world where y'all want to say something better than the next person, so that you can get a whole bunch of more retweets. It's like we all saying the same shit, but I'm gonna say it in this way and see how many retweets y'all like how I said that, right? You like how I said it. I said the same thing he said, but I said it better. Stop it, man. It's stupid. It's like y'all just, it's like everybody just riding waves, just riding trends. What's your real intentions for why you doing what you're doing? Are you getting in the business just to make $1, or do you really have a passion for this? I honestly been playing football since I was a kid. I didn't never need to make it to the NFL for anybody to know that I was a good football player. It ain't nothing but clout at that point. However, I'm happy that I was able to make it a living and all that. But it's just clout. If you're doing stuff for money, if you're doing anything for some money, you're doing it for clout. My cousin on this motorcycle.
John, I'll let you go on this note. With everything that you've said to this point, do you feel like now we're at a tipping point where, I feel like we do this all the time. I can't breathe is not an original statement. That goes back to Eric Garner when everybody said, all right, is now the time that we're all going to realize that things need to change. And Kaepernick took a knee for Philando Castillo, which was now is going to be the time when things are going to change. Does the last week, though, feel different in your eyes?
It definitely has taken a jump. You know what I mean? It's extreme. Does it feel different? No. I just think people just misled, man. We're just misled as a group of people. I don't think in life there's ever a victory lap or it dies out or anything. I think that's the problem with people. Like, we need to, like, somebody told me that I'm grown as hell. And I just thought, like, so did that mean, like, you know everything? Did that mean you're done growing? As an adult, are you done growing? Or in life, are you constantly growing? Are you constantly growing in your life? Do you grow until you die? I think so. I think you're just gonna constantly learn every day. So there's not no time. We're all still those children. We're just bigger now. You feel me? You're still learning. You don't know everything, and that means that there's always room to get better. So there is no victory lap. We haven't done anything. You feel what I'm saying?
100%.
There is no victory lap. There's no celebration. Okay, we can acknowledge that we're progressing, but just because we came a long way don't mean we ain't got a long way to go.
All right, Meghan McEwen, your thoughts on what we just learned from John Newsome?
First and foremost, that was like an education. That was fascinating to hear that perspective. You and I have talked about this before. We have privilege being white. Like, we don't have to walk down the street and be afraid when we see a cop car. That's not something that we have to deal with. And so to hear that perspective, two things that really stuck out to me. First and foremost, he says that I was taught as a young boy, I was either going to be in jail or dead when I was older. And then on top of that, to say how important it is that we listen to one another, and how just because we don't like somebody, and he brought up the example of Donald Trump. He said, like, we don't listen to Trump because we don't like Trump, but sometimes he makes some good points. And you can take Trump out of it or move that aside. It can be any person you think of, just because you just like somebody, and they can still make valid points. I thought that was interesting. And his point being just, it's so important that we listen to one another. And in this day and age in our world, everybody has a platform on social media. Everybody has the ability to say whatever they want without reaping any consequences for what they say. So to sit there and have a truly respectful conversation with somebody who differs in political views than you, with somebody who looks different than you are, with somebody who has a different background than you, those are all things that he says we can do to advance our society and try to break down these barriers that have been forever.
Two things I wanted to pull out that stuck with me most particularly. One of which was when John said we need leaders that are willing to sacrifice themselves. And there was an op-ed written for CNN this weekend from a man named Joe Lockhart, formerly worked in the NFL league office. He was in charge of communications and government affairs, an executive vice president for the NFL. And he talked about the reason that Colin Kaepernick was not signed back in 2017 was because nobody was willing to take the risk from NFL owners. The league office was saying, somebody sign him. And like there was a push, and they were trying to make that happen, but ultimately it can't have an NFL, like they can't force a team's hand. And Joe Lockhart said that one owner said, if we signed him, we would lose 20% of our season ticket base immediately. And it was, all these owners looked at it as a bad business decision. And there was no one willing to take that hit because it was the right thing to do. Not thinking down the road of like, yeah, they might lose 20% of their season ticket holder base, but they might gain some others based on whatever stance that they took. No one was willing to put themselves forward to sacrifice something of themselves for what they thought was part of the greater good. And that's one instance of it, but then that extrapolates toward every other aspect of life. The other thing that John brought up is when he said that he and I had talked on a Zoom call yesterday. What he's referencing is that we had 9 guys together on a Zoom call from the 2012 and 13 Ball State football teams. And we were watching old highlights back, and they were talking about the old highlights and kind of reminiscing of plays and what was going through their mind in those moments. It was a lot of fun. And it was, I mean, guys from all over the place. Juwan Edwards is a black man from North Carolina. Keith Wenning is a white quarterback from, rural Ohio. All these guys from different parts of the country and different backgrounds, and you put them on this one Zoom call, and it was like they were all brothers, because they spent this time melded into one unit and one team, and regardless of their background, they found the commonality between them. And I think that what you see in sports teams in that regard is something we could all benefit from on a national basis. It's one of the reasons a lot of people have advocated for mandatory national service, not necessarily military service, but some sort of mandatory national service, because you would go out in the community and do something for good with people from other backgrounds that you might not necessarily meet or interact with otherwise. And I'm curious your perspective on that, Megan, because you've played sports your whole life. You played college sports, and I'm sure interacted with people that maybe you wouldn't have otherwise.
Absolutely. Growing up with my dad being a college basketball coach, I was around a team since I can remember. And what I loved about sports in general, and what I feel like has really helped shape me into like who I am, it has helped develop my beliefs, is that this notion, you're not better than anybody. And I think that it's really important for all of us to realize that, like, we're all cut from the same cloth here, regardless of your religious views or whatnot. I mean, what makes me better than the homeless man on the street? What makes you better than somebody living in a penthouse in Manhattan. You know, they're like, we're all going to be viewed as the same. I mean, in the eyes of God, however you want to view that, or not. But the one thing I loved about being on a team was that we all had different backgrounds, and it didn't matter because we all loved basketball. Like, we all had this thing in common. That was our common thread. And through that, maybe we had different opinions about certain things. Maybe we like different types of music. Maybe we like different types of movies. But it didn't matter because, like, we all had this common thread. So we were just respectful of one another, and we all became friends. Like, it had nothing to do with, oh, well, she's from this part of the country. I've heard this about this part of the country. She likes, you know, this type of guy or this type of girl. I don't like that type. It didn't, none of that mattered because you had a common thread. And I think that we all as people have more things in common than we might realize, but we don't take the time to talk about it.
What I think is interesting about this particular instance too, and this is why I asked the last question to John, was, do you feel like something is different now than in other instances? And that is yet to be seen with what the ultimate fallout becomes. But what feels different this time, like, I've scrolled through Twitter endlessly over the last few days, and maybe I'm just following the wrong people. But I can probably count on one hand, if that, the amount of times I've read a tweet that said "sick to sports," or chastised people for speaking out. So often we're told, like, well, you can't say that because it's too controversial. How many college coaches and athletic directors have put out statements over the last couple of days? How many people, like, the conversation is always, well, you can't talk about anything that relates to politics or social justice or anything that anyone might view as controversial. You can't touch controversial things because it's controversial. You might upset some people. Everybody has said something. And the right, for the most part, the right thing, because it's okay. And, like, we should all be able to have an adult conversation, where in the past I feel like it is maybe you shouldn't touch that because you might upset somebody. And I think that is a little bit of a step forward.
I 100% agree with that. And it's so interesting. I've always found the argument that stick to sports for artists who speak up, stick to music. You don't know anything about politics. I completely disagree with that whole entire notion, because athletes and singers are multifaceted. They're not, they shouldn't be condemned for being multifaceted. They should be celebrated for it.
In this instance, that's who they are.
But just because you're an athlete doesn't mean that you can't educate yourself on politics and on what's going on in your area.
In this particular instance too, like, this is their life experience. Like, Malcolm Brogdon went viral on social media for a lot of the things that he was saying, leading a march in Atlanta. That's important, not because he's an athlete, but because he is a Black American who wants better for his community.
Exactly. But
Right.
And because he is an athlete, he has been able to gain a platform and gain the vast following that he has. So the fact that he's using that platform for this is what you're supposed to do. That's why you have a platform, and you can use it for these instances. And that's why I think it's great when athletes and actors and actresses and singers step up and use their platform for the greater good. Because what are you going to have a platform and be muzzled and not speak out against what you think is wrong?
The thing that I've thought about a lot over the last couple of days, that I've gone back to, I am a Jewish man in America. There are a lot of people that do not like Jews throughout the history of the world and in current time. I attend a synagogue that 2 years ago was vandalized. Swastikas, iron crosses, Nazi spray paint on the outside that lit a fire. And I distinctly remember in that moment, people that I knew said, like, well, I don't know if I feel safe now. Like, how am I supposed to feel safe going to synagogue? How am I supposed to feel safe bringing my kids to Hebrew school? And my initial reaction to that was, if you feel any different today than you did yesterday, why? Like, there were people that, because of something about you that you can't control, did not like you yesterday, for the same reason they don't like you today and likely, won't like you tomorrow. And just because you didn't feel that at some point in time doesn't mean that that's not there. And I'm very, like, if you've watched this show, like, I'm very open about the fact that that's who I am. I use Yiddish on the radio when I broadcast. Like, my mother has said to me in the past, be careful doing that because you never know who's listening. And I'm like, you know what? It is who I am. It is what it is. But the reason I bring up that story and the reason it stuck with me so much is for two reasons. The first of which is that if we live in a world where you feel safe because you can't see something, that doesn't mean that it doesn't exist, that it's not there. The synagogue I attended was vandalized. The feelings that led to that still existed the day before. They still existed the day after. That threat was always there. And to extrapolate that, I think for too long, we live in a society where people have not acted or have not spoken out, certainly not with the vivaciousness that we've seen over the last couple of days, because they can't see something or it doesn't directly affect them. And there was the social media, the quote on social media that's been going around the last couple of days that's been interesting is the one from Will Smith in that regard, where he said that racism isn't getting worse, it's getting filmed. This has always been there. So, like, you've got to understand the world that we live in that respect. But the second thing is that, like, I can hide my minority. Like, if I don't feel safe going to synagogue, don't go. Like, if I don't want people to know that I'm Jewish, I don't tell you. Like, I don't hang things on my wall that show it. That I can do. I never will, but ultimately I'm never going to run through a neighborhood and people be like, that I'm not from, and people are going to be like, oh, the Jew is running through here again. Nobody would have any idea. I look, as I am, I look completely like anybody else. A black person in America doesn't have that benefit. If I introduce myself to somebody for the first time, it's not as a Jew. A black person introducing themselves to somebody for the first time introduces themselves as a black person. So the fear in that moment when our synagogue was vandalized, that people said, like, oh, I don't know if I feel safe bringing my kids to Hebrew school anymore. That feeling, that is, in my mind, I was like, well, that's what it's got to be like to be an African American or a visible minority all the time. So if that's what you felt like in that moment, imagine what it feels like to be in somebody else's shoes. And that is, like, incomprehensible. And I think until we have the ability to understand that, it's going to be hard to make progress, but I think we're finally, hopefully, starting to see that.
And what I hear from what you just said is acknowledge your privilege and acknowledge that you have it, that you have the ability to walk down the street and not be fearful. And I think that's something we really have to do as a society, is acknowledge that we are privileged from that account.
What'd you think of your dad's team putting out the statement they put out?
Well, I'm so proud, just so proud that they did that. It's important. And, I follow a lot of his players on Instagram and on Twitter, and a lot of them have been speaking up, which is so cool, in my opinion, that they are using their platform to make a positive change, because they have young people. And we listened to this with Jonathan earlier in our conversation, like the importance of influencing young people and changing, the way that they view the world and how they're going to grow up and influence another generation. So I think it's really great that Northwestern put out a statement like that. And I hope that more schools and more programs follow suit, because this issue goes far beyond basketball. It goes far beyond anything that we're looking at through a lens, a small lens. So I was really proud that they did that.
Have you talked to your dad at all?
No, I haven't talked to him yet.
I was gonna say I don't. It's always struck me as interesting being you talked about what it's like playing on a basketball team, being a basketball coach or a football coach or coach of any athletics team. When you bring all those diverse backgrounds together, what it's like to be the mentor in a situation like that where you can lead those life lessons.
Yeah, I think it's definitely it's important. I think I know just from our conversations we've had about this in the past, he feels it's important to be a leader from that standpoint, but not by dictating this is what we think, but by listening to what his players are saying and hearing what they are saying to help form a unified message, which I think is really cool.
All right, Megan, we'll leave it there. Good conversation this week. And usually we'd go into pop culture and the like, but it seems kind of sarcastic to do that this week.
Agreed. Totally. Great conversation. I learned a lot from that.
All right, we'll keep learning, and hopefully all of us will keep learning, keep growing. As Jonathan said, we're sometimes fully grown. We are never fully formed. So with that in mind, we will talk to you back here next week.